Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth in sincerity. And shout out to the Akims out there in the four quarters of the earth to proclaim this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. So, when we make statements such as car fire was no accident, Dixie fire was no accident, these were all being done on purpose, well, it's because we know the history about Esau using weather modification, which has been around for years, as this 1970 military report goes into, and they're using it now, especially with everything that's going on in Spokane. They're using weather as a weapon, and we all know about the Rothschild plan to burn California. And it's going in full effect. As you know, this heat wave is supposed to last all the way until the 8th, and it's been for such a while, though, that I have to be downstairs and in my apartment just simply because of the fact that, it's too hot for my dog, so therefore I have to be downstairs with my dog because it's just way too hot. It's like putting her in a fucking pressure cooker. That's how fucking hot it is in the upstairs where the two bedrooms are. So, either way, though, we definitely know that this is geoengineering at its finest, and they're using weather as a weapon and deliberately letting the fires burn, as this goes into.
The military has been studying the use of forest fires as a weapon since 1970.
Truly shocking. Forest fire is a military weapon. Final report, June 1970. Yet more insanity from the military-industrial complex. This formally classified U.S. military report provides in-depth detail on the methods the military uses to prepare vast swaths of forests for extremely intense forest fire incinerations. The United States Forest Service provided much of the data for the U.S. military. Question: is that really the job description for the Forest Service, to instruct the U.S. military on how to, quote, set the stage for maximum intensity forest fire incinerations by months-long atmospheric spraying of desiccants and defoliants? Are U.S. citizens and populations around the world now in the same category as the Viet Cong were during the U.S. invasion of Vietnam? Even more disturbing about this report is the fact that it includes specific data that outlines the best engineered forest fire incineration timing for various regions in the U.S.
But surely that's just theoretical military research. It's not like anyone has been spraying our forests with chemicals.
The Forest Service is spraying glyphosate in the forests of Lake Tahoe and the surrounding areas. They're using the herbicide as a tool for forest management and burn scars, and even in recreational areas like trails and campgrounds. This needs to stop, and it's going to be up to all of us.
So yeah, that fog outside your window, I'm sure it's completely natural. Nothing strange about it.
Okay, this is the smoke in Traverse City. See, you can hardly see the water. It is so bad. I can feel it in my throat. Not good. Traverse City, Michigan today. You can still see the water, but you can't see very far. There's the sun. You can't even see the sun.
Yep. So they've been using that for a while. So here's the latest of what's going on with Spokane and those fires in Washington. As soon as this plays, looks like I'm having difficulty. Slovakia, gonna have to fix this. Sorry, the player was screwing up. Anyhow, this is what's happening in Washington, Spokane in particularly.
But the flames aren't the only thing firefighters are battling. As wildfires tear through Washington, dozens of unauthorized drones are grounding firefighting aircraft, giving the flames more time to spread. 60,000 people have already fled. Hundreds of homes are gone, and one reckless flight could make the disaster even worse.
Yeah, it looks like car fire.
A rapidly escalating wildfire emergency is unfolding in the U.S. state of Washington, where fast-moving blazes have forced around 60,000 people to evacuate, destroyed at least 600 homes, businesses, and other structures, and left thousands facing hazardous air conditions as firefighters race to contain the flames. Authorities said on August 2nd that the fires burning in and around Spokane, Washington's second-largest city, have scorched vast areas, with the Old Trails Fire, Fairview Fire, and Autumn Lane Fire together burning more than 7,000 acres. Officials warned that firefighting efforts were also being disrupted by unauthorized drone activity. According to the official Spokane Area Fire's Facebook page, firefighters recorded 26 drone incursions over active fire zones on Sunday, repeatedly forcing aircraft to suspend operations.
If you fly, we can't. Today alone, firefighters responding to the Spokane area fires experienced 26 drone incursions over active fire operations. As a result, 2 drone operators have already been identified and cited by the Sheriff's Department. When an unauthorized drone enters restricted airspace over a wildfire, firefighting aircraft, including helicopters and air tankers, must often be grounded until the airspace is clear. Every minute those aircraft are unable to fly gives the fire more opportunity to grow, putting firefighters, communities, and property at greater risk. If you see smoke, keep your drone on the ground. No photo or video is worth delaying critical firefighting operations. Help us protect the people working to protect our communities. If you fly, we can.
Fire officials said all 3 blazes remain at 0% containment, while the cause of the fires is still under investigation. Body camera footage released by Spokane County firefighters from August 1st shows crews rushing between burning properties, deploying hoses, and battling intense flames as thick smoke engulfed neighborhoods. Eyewitness videos captured homes reduced to rubble, vehicles burned beyond recognition, and entire streets blanketed in smoke. The human toll of the disaster continues to mount.
I just want to say that hundreds of homes and structures have been lost. We are still assessing the potential for lives to be lost.
So we know this is deliberate. Because if you go back to Car Fire, Dixie Fire.
Everyone here, our hearts go out to you. We are here for you for the long term.
Well, there's
Washington Governor Bob Ferguson
a reason behind it, right? Direct energy weapons.
I'll just start by saying there are just so many Washingtonians who have literally lost everything in a very, very short period of time. Just in a matter of hours, their lives changed in deeply dramatic and fundamental ways. And so it's difficult to find words when folks have experienced a loss like that. But we want all those individuals to know that we are all here for the long haul. We have a lot of crises right in front of us that we're working through.
Yeah, I bet you'll let it burn for 6 or 9 months.
And we're here for the long haul.
Like Dixie
Beyond
Fire.
flames, another crisis is unfolding in the air. Wildfire smoke pushed Spokane's air quality index to 207 on Sunday, placing it in the very unhealthy category and making it the 2nd worst air quality in the United States. Officials warned the combination of wildfire smoke, a persistent heat dome, stagnant air, and rising temperatures could push conditions into the hazardous range. Forecasts show winds shifting eastward, carrying smoke towards Seattle and Portland, where air quality may also deteriorate to levels considered unhealthy for sensitive groups.
Yeah, this looks like a lot like the Car Fire. And that was deliberate also. Wasn't no goddamn trailer that started that fire. But that's the official story.
I just want to say that hundreds of homes and structures have been lost. We are still assessing the potential for lives to be lost. So to the people who are suffering right now in our region from either loss or uncertainty, everyone here, our hearts go out to you. We are here for you for the long term.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. FEMA! Yep. Wait on FEMA. Wait for years to get compensated, right? Either way, your ass is fucked. And don't forget, when it comes time for cleanup, you got to pay for the cleanup. Yeah, you'll owe another $6,000 or $7,000. That's what happened to people in Keswick here after the Car Fire. So, all being done deliberate. You'll owe nothing and be happy. Yes, it's part of that agenda. So, just getting into some headlines here. So, we got a new virus. Yeah, another virus hoax, right? Rare virus with no cure detected in New York. There's no vaccine. Oh, isn't that a shame? I thought the vaccine was the cure. Hey, Dr. Fucky might have some for you if they weren't grilling him. Oh, they got worse people like that. You know, they got Pfizer. You know, that guy will never see jail time. They won't even fucking get any scrutiny over it. The little AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson, who actually were the makers of the fucking vaccine. No, you just see Dr. Fucky. He's the fall guy. But nonetheless, though, these are done by ticks. Transmitted by the Lone Star tick. Oh, so this must have come from Texas, right? Lone Star State. This is the Lone Star tick. First case of bourbon virus has been confirmed in New York, prompting researchers to call for expanded surveillance and testing amid warnings. Okay, more retard masks. You know, sounds like coronavirus or hantavirus. Well, you got a new one anyways. Only 6 human cases have been reported since the virus was created, primarily in central U.S. The first known patient diagnosed in Kansas in 2014 died. So, actually, this bourbon virus thing has been around for a while. Bourbon virus could soon begin to complicate diagnosis if it becomes more prevalent this summer and in the coming years. So, there we go. Yep, another virus. Esau's scheming. U.S. punished Colombia's outgoing leader for calling Gaza war a genocide. Israeli state is at the heart of DC's long-running tensions with Colombia and its ousting of President Petro. Former Minister Yolanda told RT. In an exclusive interview aired on Sunday, Velasco insisted that the decisive factor behind U.S. sanctions against Petro was not his alleged failure to combat drug trafficking, but rather his outspoken support for Palestine and repeated accusations, or revelations, you could say, that Israeli state was committing genocide in Gaza, which is just barely scratching the surface of it. But nonetheless, though, they got a new leader in there anyways. They got who they want in there, just like they took over Venezuela. They took over Colombia. But that was a soft takeover, like his plans to take Cuba. You know, a nice soft takeover to where they begged Trump for help. Pentagon plans AI data centers, you mean surveillance centers, at military bases across multiple branches. Oh, don't you even think about going AWOL. We got surveillance for you. Oh, no. Don't be looking at that site. We got surveillance. We're tracking your every move. And don't forget this chip to tell where you're at all times. At Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, on ground, the Army's own contracting documents describe a previously used for grazing a company owned by two of the largest investment firms in the world is preparing to build a data center. Trying to build a prison. Yeah, you work for this fucking government, man. You're fucked anyways. But that's just the way the Most High has it. You know, it's going to kill off you 2/3, as well as pretty much all of Edom. The heart of Edom, right here in Babylon. That site, about an hour's drive from the nearest community on the installation where the U.S. military conducts primarily chemical and biological weapons. 3 parcels there, totaling roughly 3,466, one of them about 1,201 acres. It's already spoken for, so it's a very large data center, surveillance state, you know. That way they make sure that nobody ever talks about it. U.S. and Israeli state staged Spain migration invasion. So there we go. And like everything else, though, everybody knows what this is about. The Ceuta crisis was supposed to serve as punishment for Madrid's stance on West Asia conflicts, Tehran has argued. The U.S. and Israeli state orchestrated the mass migrants crossing from Morocco into Spain's North African enclave to punish Madrid for its refusal to bow to pressure on West Asia conflicts. Iran's embassy in Kenya has suggested Spain has been at odds with D.C. and West Jerusalem over the Gaza war and strikes against Iran. So, like everything else, so the whole thing was staged, and got one more article here, and then from Last American Vagabond, he gets into it a little bit. We'll play some of that. U.S. raises travel advisory for Spanish area amid illegal immigrant influx. Of course, you had the King of Babylon himself say, oh no, it's flooded with illegals. You know, well, we just had ICE in there. U.S. Department of State on Saturday increased travel advisory to Ceuta, Spain to a higher level due to unrest by a recent mass influx of illegal immigrants. Oh no. And don't forget, Islamic too. Ooh, ISIS. You know. So, anyhow, Last American Vagabond gets into this. So, either way, Last American Vagabond, they get into this, you know, about how this whole thing is engineered because they wouldn't go along with his plan to attack Iran, and they said, no, you can't use our airspace, and no, we don't support it. So, you know, here you go, revenge, you could say.
But I guess the takeaway, in case you missed it, is that they all benefit from the cycle, guys. It is a hamster wheel, and it never stops. They all continue
like a
benefiting,
hamster
handing out to the
wheel.
baton, and we always point to the other side of it. And it's a very clear model to keep us pointing away from the people currently responsible, even when they're all responsible. And even in that sense, only pointing at half the responsibility. So you never really get change. That's the whole point. So in this larger sense, as we're talking about Israel infiltration, well, it's happening all over the world, guys, and that's really important to understand. And we've been continuing to highlight that for a decade plus. Now, this we just talked about yesterday, Spain's weaponized engineered migration. And Trump's floundering with Iran, we'll point to more at the end, and then coming third-party deception, where we highlighted the idea that Tucker, and by the way, Steve has been talking about this for a long time now. This is basically his prediction since, what, a year ago? That Tucker, Marshall Green, Massey, they had that picture at the table, and, you know, I hope for the best, and I hold their feet to the fire. And historically, they never seem to follow through with their promises. So I'm expecting the third-party shoe to drop. Go into the show if you want to get more into that. I think there's more to be said about, you know, where it goes and what their motivations are, and how both Vance and Alex Jones, both Tucker and Alex Jones are very supportive of J.D. Vance, whether or not they publicly endorsed the president, which I've never said. The point is that they're clearly supportive of him, which makes them hypocrites, because he is identical to all the things he's pointing out. He just has a different, you know, look, at the end of the day, he's going to stand up and give you a little eye slant that makes him look like he suddenly doesn't agree with Trump, and everyone makes that into a case. Listen to what he said. Look at his policies. He's continued to back everything they've been doing, and they want you to believe he's different. Maybe.
But maybe since we just went through the cycle of all these people admitting they were played by Trump, then maybe we can go, hey, why fall in line with the next person who is only promising and yet to deliver? Doesn't that seem like basic logic? But see, these people's minds only fall back into the same cycle. You pick a team and you run with it. That's what they do. Mostly, I think, because it ultimately benefits them. But in this case, Spain's engine in migration. Now, the bigger point of this was that it's obvious that there's manipulation here, guys. As the New York Times pointed out, as we'll mention again from this article today, is that there were people in the crowd that said they were told to do this. And of course, that could be a lie. But there's historically very obvious cases here. Now, one of the main ones is that there's a conversation about West Sahara that took place when the U.S. government said that they had the rights to it, Morocco, in 2020. 2023, Israel said the same thing. Right? So that's a long time ago. Now, that's being either dishonestly or just without due diligence being conflated with the current conversation. Largely Ceuta and Melilla, I believe. But Ceuta is the focal point, I guess, the larger focal point. But the idea is because on the map, we're talking about something that is between Africa and Spain. And the idea is that the tip of Africa, which is, you have the Morocco claim to that area, is something that Spain claimed as theirs. Now, there's a lot of overlaps. Because and the point to make is that the U.S. and Israel have been driving Morocco to take that territory back for years. Benjamin Netanyahu's son posted about it in 2019 saying, hey, Arabs and Muslims, you want to take your land back? Start here. Exactly like that. He claimed, of course, he was making a point, and maybe he was, but the whole reality of it is there's an obvious... Now, nobody honest is saying that Netanyahu's son's post proved they did it. Because it doesn't. You can argue it suggests that, but you can't prove that he was, but I do believe it's relevant. And of course, I believe it's clear when you look into the deeper connections between Morocco and the U.S. and Israel, and how this is continuing, which I'm going to show more today. But the real point, or I guess beyond the motivations, is that I think there are organic things involved here. Clearly, there are people involved, like in any situation, where they went into depth in this conversation on the first, that are abused. They're used. So it shouldn't be that everybody here is an operative. Like, that's just kind of a lazy take. Like, it's always more than that. But we need to understand that this was motivated. People were paid. They were directed. And it's all on the record at this point. But it doesn't mean it's all fake. Now, motivation-wise, I think it's obvious. I think there's a clear motivation for the U.S. government to use this as the example of why they need what they need. And even with today's article, exposing that there were Moroccan intelligence operatives involved, it still makes a case for why the intensive technocratic surveillance is necessary. So there's all these different angles to it. But what's crazy is that so first you have the idea that they're going to see this is what they get for their liberal policies and invasion, even though it was orchestrated, and it wasn't what they were doing before. And then on top of that, or then secondarily, you have the idea from Israel's perspective. But they're playing into that too, the idea of the American immigration policy point. But you have the other side of it where they're, and then I guess a third idea would be, look at what you get when you pretend Muslims are good. Like, that's what you're getting from a lot of the Zionist conversation. Just disgusting. And again, it assumes that everybody with the skin color is automatically Muslim from the skin. It's not true, guys. There's Christians and all, there's a multifaceted thing. There's always a majority, wherever you go, but to pretend that because they're Moroccan or Muslim is just racist. It's disgusting. It's bigoted. It's not the truth. But again, the last point was, I believe Israel's also playing into this from a different angle. You're not really hearing from the U.S. perspective, which is that they use this to overlap with their situation. There's an interesting kind of side story about how Zionists in the United States have kind of lost the plot and are arguing so blatantly in the way that makes them look like what we call them, that it's hurting the Israeli agenda. And so even right now, you see them really harping on the U.S. interest from their Zionist perspective, but at the same time, that kind of makes the case for why what's happening is, like, basically shows you that Israel occupying the territory is the bad thing. Like, it's interesting, because they're saying, Spain shouldn't be doing that, it's colonial. And it's like, ooh, wait, hold on, this is exactly what Israel's doing right there. So it's a mixed bag. But from Israel's side of it, I think they're pushing the idea that ultimately, that if their colonialism exists, then so should ours. Which is what Danny Dan and plenty of others pointed out. So it's interesting, right? So keeping that in mind, we went over this more in depth yesterday. This is what came out today. The Civil Guard detects Moroccan intelligence, is translated from Spanish, I believe. The Civil Guard detects Moroccan intelligence agents among the migrants who sneak into Ceuta. The Civil Guard detected the presence of agents from the Moroccan Information Service through the cameras deployed at the border. Now, I'll come back to that with the part at the end where they really stress that this is why it's important with the surveillance and the facial radar. It feels a little bit specific, but it says this is revealed exclusively to El Español by sources from the General Staff of the Armed Institute, who assure that these individuals were located during monitoring carried out in real time using the advanced and cutting-edge video surveillance system that controls the border perimeter. So, I don't think this is the only thing, but just for sake of conversation, it'd be interesting if the only reason all this happened was to rationalize intensive real-time surveillance. Even though we all have it, there's a lot of pushback to it. Now, I don't think that's the case. I think that might be a secondary byproduct of, hey, we can use that either way. It's worth considering. But it says, according to these sources, the presence of members of the Moroccan intelligence services mixed among the migrants, it does not constitute an isolated event, but a phenomenon that the Civil Guard claims to have detected in previous episodes of migratory pressure on both the territories of Ceuta and Melilla. So what they're saying is they've been doing this before. Now, I'm going to get into how clear it is that there's basically, what they're trying to do in the U.S. right now, merging the military and the intelligence services, that I think has long ago happened in Morocco. And plenty of other places that Israel has forced. I mean, the whole normalization thing with some of these countries, that's what that sort of amounts to if you allow Israel. Look at Venezuela. Look at what they're actually doing on the ground. That's what this kind of, it amounts to not just occupation, but what's a better word for it? Like, control, really, but more than just sort of militarily dictating, but like invasively getting involved in the politics and then projecting that country's politics as if you're not involved. And funny, David Icke and I talked about this in regard to Sabbatianism. Let me see if I can get that to come up. Yeah, it's a good conversation. We talked about what he argues is the kind of one of the foundational elements of technically Zionism, Nazism, and communism, which is Sabbatianism. And the title of the interview was Zionism, Infiltration of Judaism, Weaponized Migration, and Mainstream Media. Important right now. Actually, I should show that out again. But so the idea is that this Sabbatians were, like, he argues based on his history and his research of it, were basically, like, it was centered around infiltrating religions and politics, and it's very relevant, isn't it? Share that out really quickly. Seems especially relevant. There's a lot of that going around right now. So, continuing, back to the point is that that's not an isolated event. Now it says, in fact, the New York Times, as we showed you yesterday, spoke with several Moroccan nationals who claimed they were encouraged to cross into the areas by the Moroccan authorities. Sources from Spanish information services corroborate what was observed by those responsible for the armed institute through the camera on the Beni Enzar perimeter. They point out that an operation of these characteristics, typical of hybrid warfare, that's very relevant from an Israel-U.S. perspective, could not have been carried out without the participation of the service that operates in Morocco. Quote, it is the logical procedure for any intelligence service. It is the purpose of the presence was to observe the operational response to the security forces and court and follow the events on the ground. So their argument, their perspective, is that this was done to see how they reacted, testing the waters, if you will. How are they going to? Where do they come? What part of the area do they come at hardest? Sort of saying they're testing this for future action. The Civil Guard considers that these systems constitute a fundamental tool. This is about surveillance, not only to detect attempts at irregular entry, but also to identify behaviors that may be of interest to state security. So no matter where you look in the world, they're pushing the idea of technocratic surveillance, real-time, surveillance like biometric surveillance, if not pre-crime, which is what that sounds like. Of course, this is what Trump has been pushing aggressively. Since his first administration, to this very point, he's doing it still. This is according to the sources consulted. It was precisely the real-time analysis of these images, the real-time now, that's AI, that made it possible to notice the presence of people attributed to Moroccan information services. So it's funny, so this is what gave them the insight to find out they were being manipulated, but it's promoting the idea of real-time AI facial recognition. The migratory pressure on Ceuta, is that what it was again? Ceuta, I think so, continues to be one of the main security challenges for Spain on the southern border of Europe. And here's Trump going, exactly. Interesting. So the basic point, guys, is that this has been called out from a lot of different angles, that they have Moroccan intelligence agents involved while it's all going down.
Yep, a Mossad job, because like everything else, though, they didn't support Trump, when he begged for help. And then, of course, like everything else, though, Saudi Arabia found out they have more to lose if they get much more involved. So, Saudi Crown Prince urges Trump to prioritize dialogue in U.S.-Iran war, meaning, let's not escalate things. The U.S. president halted strikes after earlier threatening Iran with unprecedented force. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince spoke to Donald Trump about the deepening crisis between D.C. and Tehran, urging a renewed push for dialogue over future military escalation, hours before the U.S. president halted his latest attacks against Iran. So, like everything else, though, he got a call from Saudi Arabia. So we'll play some of this. It'll play. I don't think it will. Wait. Yeah, it plays.
For more on the story, let's bring in our guest. Abdullah Bandar Al-Taibi is an assistant professor in international affairs at Qatar University. He joins us live from Doha today. And in Riyadh, we have Abdulaziz Al-Ghashian. He's a senior non-resident fellow at the Gulf International
Fair use, by the way.
Thanks for joining us. Abdullah, I'll start with you. The perimeter of a deal has been agreed to. What does that mean?
Well, that's a good question, Anna. We're still in the early stages, and the first few hours of this announcement by President Trump, we're still not sure if the MOU is falling apart, and that's it, that we need to start from the beginning and to focus more on the real deal, which is not only the navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, but also to focus on the nuclear deal. So it's still early to really see where we're going and where we're heading, basically, as a region and as a world, in a fight that both parties are still not actually lenient when it comes to their positions on Hormuz, for example, and we see that the Iranians are not easing their position. Therefore, I think the threat for a wider war and a wider conflict is not gone. It's still looming, Anna, but the thing is, we have now more time for the Iranians to cooperate with the regional countries in order to come up with some sort of an arrangement with the Strait of Hormuz in order to get that diplomacy back on track.
Abdulaziz, can I ask you about the timing of this announcement? Donald Trump's announcement coming after the phone call from the Crown Prince. Why do you think Saudi Arabia made that call?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me, Anna. I think it is important because I think there is basically, in my opinion, a last-ditch effort to try to maintain what is any kind of sense of a ceasefire, any sense of stability. I think there is a real doubt that maybe this ceasefire is going to actually manifest. And I think, in my opinion, they are trying to prepare for another round of escalations. In my opinion, also, I think they are trying to perhaps anticipate what may be the tit-for-tat sequencing of targets and attacks that are going to take place. So here, I think this is why there was profuse diplomacy with the United States, between Saudi Arabia and the United States, between the the Crown Prince and the Defense Minister to really begin to ascertain maybe what are the actions that will take place, in addition with a great deal of diplomacy. This is also, in my opinion, trying to communicate to the region that Saudi Arabia seeks de-escalation, but it does not want to take responsibility for any kind of escalation. And what I would say is that while I think the Saudi ruling elite know that maybe there is a real chance of escalation, they want to put the brakes on this escalation. They want this escalation to be more controlled and more clear, and so they could deal with the situation as best as possible in a way that could really increase their security and the security of the Gulf, really.
What is it you think, though, that shifted the needle here for the president, specifically coming from Saudi Arabia? We have seen other Gulf countries try to mediate this deal, try to get the parties back to the table, and certainly that phone call and then this announcement seems to have been enough for the president. What specifically do you think it was that Saudi was able to say to move him?
Well, I think they know how to speak to Donald Trump. This is in my opinion. I think they know what to say to Donald Trump. And I think the fact that they appreciated having the defense minister being sent to the United States. And so this speaks to the ego of Donald Trump, which is something that I think the entire world is doing. They're speaking to that ego. But they also know that Donald Trump himself is someone that will say something today, and tomorrow he will say something different, and then the day after he will tweet something different. They know that there is no real stability when it comes to Donald Trump. But they are trying. They are doing this in a way that will mitigate the ramifications of any process. Now, the Saudis and other GC states really do want stability. This is part of, basically, this is an existential question for them. You know, they are not profiting from war like what other actors in the region are profiting from war. And in my opinion, I think also this is just part of their approach of trying to have a very unlinear approach by trying to work with the United States when it comes to their security, but also trying to mitigate ramifications from Iran and trying to maintain any kind of neighborliness as turbulent as it may be with Iran. So I think, in my opinion, it is the way they spoke with Donald Trump. But in my opinion also, it's just going to be a matter of time maybe till we see another escalation. And basically, the Saudis are not waiting for this ceasefire to fall down again. I think they're just preparing for the worst case scenarios.
Okay. Abdullah, can I ask you then, because the Gulf and the world was promised, when we talk about Donald Trump's messaging that Abdulaziz referred to there, the world was promised by Donald Trump a very swift and decisive victory, that America would come in, tidy this up, and away it would go again. Have Gulf countries shifted their perspective now because of where this has led to, an entrenched warfare with no end in sight and neither party willing to move or win?
I mean, that's the difficult position that the GCC and the regional countries are in. They basically want this to come to an end. They want to go back to stability in the region, because stability is bringing prosperity and peace to the whole region. But when it comes to the positions of both parties, they are not actually going easy with their positions and with their demands. And this is what puts the region under lots of pressure, especially in the past few weeks when we saw daily American strikes around the Strait of Hormuz to disable Iranians' ability to control navigation, where Iran actually just responded by attacking regional countries and not even attacking Israel that launched the war in the first place. So this has put the region at lots of risk.
And the main reason for that is you save the last enemy for last, which is the Greater Israel Project, right? You know, you don't just attack them first. No, you get rid of all the other problems that are in the way. Then you go after the main one. And I think that's why Iran also is, again, adapted another Cobra Kai strategy. As you saw that, okay, they just went after the base. They've totally annihilated the Jordan base, you know, before they could ever send any troops further into Syria or Iraq to try to invade Iran. They just totally wiped out the base in Jordan, you know, and attacked first, you know, without any doubt. You know, the plans have changed. Strike first or strike hard, because your enemy wants you dead. You must put down your enemy. That's what Cobra Kai teaches, and I think that's the way that they're thinking. So we're going to see a lot of differences in the way this war is going. Not to mention, as you'll see, even Trump is saying that they're ready to talk. No, they're not. They're not talking at all to him. That's been cut off. Evidence suggests the U.S. dropped a 2,000-pound bomb on a home in Iran, killing a 2-year-old. And his parents, they are not letting this go. And don't forget, they killed the Ayatollah. So they still want to be avenged for that. The strike launched on the 30th of July killed Kafar Jafari, who was identified by Iranian media as a taxi driver, and his wife Zahra, and their 2-year-old son Sina. 2 other children from the family survived the strike and were rescued from the rubble. You know, this is just another terrorist attack, just like the one in Minhag. And the U.S. is good at that, you know, because they do whatever. You know, you can say the U.S. of Israel, because that's what it is. You know, especially with this merging. EUROCOM general warns U.S. lacks ships to continue defense of Israeli state, and that just came out yesterday. The commander of U.S. forces in Europe warned D.C. that it lacks the ships to continue to defend the Israeli state from Iranian missile attacks. The Navy has placed ships in the East Mediterranean Sea to help Israeli state shoot down missiles from Iran. Iran attacked Israeli state with missiles and drones in response to the U.S. and Israeli aggression, and guess what? They haven't been hitting the Israeli state. No, they got a newer strategy, a much better Cobra Kai type of strategy. So, pretty much this guy reads a lot of the articles, and he does excellent work and commenting on them and putting it together, so, you know, where it's at, you know, and pretty much so, they're just sitting ducks there, right? The USS Lincoln was already hit by Iran, and they claim that Iran's Navy and Air Force has been destroyed, yet Iran's able to hit. You know, they have totally miscalculated what Iran can do.
A top U.S. military general is going public with a dire warning. The United States has run out of military equipment if Donald Trump intends to escalate the catastrophic war in Iran. A general who I've been praising now for the better part of the year, even before the United States invaded Venezuela. He's the one who came out with this publicly. His name is General Alexis Grinkowicz. His call sign is Grinch. He's currently the Allied commander for the United States with NATO. He's a beloved general, and based on him going public, I worry that he will probably be forced out or fired like many of the other top generals and admirals that the Trump regime has pushed out, as Hegseth and Trump have pushed out. But General Alexis Grinkowicz, he went public in the past 24 hours. The top U.S. commander in Europe at NATO, he warned that the Pentagon no longer has enough Navy destroyers to be involved in any escalation of this catastrophic war in Iran. The way Grinkowicz framed it, knowing that Donald Trump is a Netanyahu bootlicker, is Grinkowicz is like, I know Israel's the one dragging us into this escalation again, like Netanyahu dragged us into this catastrophic war with Iran, but let's be clear, Trump and Hegseth and the U.S. regime of war criminals was complicit with the Netanyahu regime of war criminals. But what Grinkowicz is saying is, all right, well then you're not going to be able to protect Israel. We're not going to be able, if that's what matters to you, Donald, apparently that's the big deal for you, not the American people, not the Middle East allies, not anybody else, you war criminal, well, we're not going to be able to protect Israel. So don't be surprised when Iran is able to pierce through the so-called Iron Dome in Israel. Iran has already been able to destroy, Grinkowicz explains, and we've been talking about this, the Arab Dome, the dome you promised to protect the Arab nations. Iran is striking all the U.S. bases there, and you're about to expose that the Iron Dome isn't able to protect Israel right now, Grinkowicz is basically saying. So these Navy destroyers, which have intercepted missiles targeting Israel and other locations as well, are stretched by operations in the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and around Iran, while maintenance issues have further reduced availability. I want you to think about that too. Maintenance issues. We've seen that with the aircraft carrier groups as well, because Hegseth doesn't know what the hell he's doing. The most basic stuff, keep your equipment operational, keep your ships operational, deal with things like the nuts and bolts. I know that's boring for Donald Trump and Hegseth, things like the plumbing, the laundry, food on the ship, stuff like that. Hegseth doesn't care about and doesn't think about. And so you have maintenance issues.
Why not? He doesn't have to fight the war now, does he?
Iran realizes this. That's one of the reasons the Houthis opened up the Red Sea and shut down the Red Sea to Saudi Arabia's tankers. Saudi Arabia now has to take a longer route around Africa. MBS sent his brother this past week while Netanyahu was in the U.S. His brother's the defense minister, Khalid bin Salman, to meet with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. MBS called Donald Trump yesterday, and you had the warning from General Grinkowicz in Europe saying, we don't have the ability anymore with Navy destroyers to help you if you escalate this catastrophic war. We're giving you this warning. So it wasn't surprising that late last night around 11 p.m., Donald Trump posted, despite the fact that we have the capabilities and levels of military terror strength like we've never had before since World War II. We have military terror ready to go. But the perimeter of a deal with Iran is now being discussed. Trump says the perimeter, so we're not going to strike Iran. Look, it's not just an issue of the Navy destroyers. And by the way, the Navy destroyers carry SM-3 and SM-6 anti-ballistic missile interceptors. We also know that the United States has run out of its stockpile of the THAAD interceptors. Like each one of them cost about $12.5 million each. The PAC-3 Patriot interceptors we've run out of. And in order to replenish the THAAD and the PAC-3s and these SM-3s and SM-6s, takes years. I mean, maybe some PAC-3s will be ready to go in 2029 based on what we depleted, but these THAADs can potentially be pushed to 2030, maybe even later, for when they will be ready. I mean, it is a real dire situation.
See how everything's lessening to where nuclear missiles are the only thing left?
Just to remind you what Grinkowicz said back in January of 2026. This is when I began highlighting General Grinkowicz, and one of the things he was talking about then is he's like, pay attention, because while Donald Trump is out there attacking Greenland and attacking all of these countries that Trump is attacking our allies, Grinkowicz is like, I just want you to be aware. You've got Iran. He was in Sweden rather, when he was giving the speech, talking about what a model ally Sweden is. He was trying to, be nice to like other NATO allies, Grinkowicz was. But he was like, look, Iran, China, North Korea, they're working together. They're building up their munitions while Trump is out there basically attacking allies. That's what Grinkowicz was basically saying. Here, play this clip.
China continues to fund Putin's war machine. Iran continues to supply technology and weapons. And North Korean combat troops remain in Russia on Ukraine's border. And of course, there's a confluence between Russia, Iran, and Venezuela and their dark fleet of oil tankers that is helping to fund the war. In the Arctic and the high north, we see a similar trend. Russian and Chinese vessels are conducting more and more joint patrols. Chinese icebreakers and research vessels are in Arctic waters, and their research is not for peaceful purposes. It's to gain a military advantage. Russia, meanwhile, continues testing advanced capabilities in the Barents Sea. As new shipping routes emerge and new resources are discovered, the Arctic only grows in strategic importance. And all of this comes in the midst of an increasing hybrid threat: airspace violations, GPS and GNSS interference, and the Shadow Fleet in the Baltic Sea threatening underwater infrastructure. In short, the Arctic, and Northern Europe by extension, has become a front line for strategic competition.
And then in that same event, again back in January of 2026, Grinkowicz, who just issued this warning, was talking about trying to do his best to make sure that the U.S. had a readiness posture. And so the fact that he's now saying July 31st, August 1st, August 2nd, that the U.S. no longer has an ability to project a readiness posture, when he said this was his main focus as the Allied Commander Europe of NATO back in January, it shows you how disastrous this all is. Here, play this clip.
Well, I won't comment on the political.
Which means Russia could take NATO easily
now.
now.
Just observe the readout from the North Atlantic Council, where all of our permanent representatives of 32 nations get together to discuss thorny issues. Those dialogues continue in Brussels. They've been healthy dialogues from what I've heard, and I think that's the most important thing. Members of the alliance who've worked together for so many years are talking together and working through these thorny issues.
You have this role for about 6 months now. Has your priorities in any way changed?
Is it only 6 months?
Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way.
No. It's actually been truly a fantastic 6 months. One of the best jobs that exists on the planet, in my view, and I've truly enjoyed it. My priorities have been pretty consistent. I've got several of them. One of them, of course, I'm focused on taking care of our people, your people, that you contribute to the alliance and to our missions. They are the bread and butter of what we do every single day. And Michael Clausen and I actually got an opportunity to go see some of the Swedish troops yesterday, Swedish Marines who,
so either way, they can't defend.
Uniform.
They can't defend. If this war were to expand, against Ukraine, and Russia decided to go after the ones supplying Ukraine, which they promised. They promised anyone, who's sending weapons into Ukraine become legitimate targets. So if they want to take that approach, they could wipe them out. And the U.S. wouldn't be able to do anything about it, because they've had their hands full with Iran. See, it's had the opposite effect. They thought they weakened Russia with the Ukraine invasion, right? When Ukraine, and what had happened with Ukraine pretty much shelling those areas, and what they've done is they've weakened, they depleted everything, sending it into Ukraine. So you just got munitions disappearing. Even Biden said that they're running out of ammo, that they don't have any more ammo, because they've been sending it to Ukraine to fight Russia. And Russia ain't no paper tiger, unlike Trump. Pentagon orders U.S. troops to devise creative options for punishing Iran. So like everything else, no, they're not backing down for this. They're just revising it. The report says military leaders acknowledge that the U.S. strategy needs revision, and that recent strikes are not effective enough. CENTCOM calls on troops to offer creative ways to punish Iran. According to an exclusive CNN report, U.S. Central Command launched an internal brainstorming blitz last week, instructing military analysts to pitch untraditional tactics to intensify. Like going after civilian infrastructure, which their plan was to blow up power plants, etc., until that call came in from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and Iran discuss efforts to reduce regional tensions. See, they, like everything else, though, it's not very profitable for Saudi Arabia and Iran to be at war with each other. So, you know, the only thing that they haven't done is kick the U.S. out of there, which they should, you know, because it in no way does it benefit them. Saudi foreign minister and his Iranian counterpart discussed the latest regional development and diplomatic efforts to reduce tensions during a phone call on Sunday. The call was received from Agashi, according to a statement by the Saudi Foreign Ministry. The ministry said the two ministers reviewed the latest developments in light of the current situation alongside diplomatic efforts aimed at this de-escalation, which is basically meaning that stop offering support to the U.S., stop allowing it. Iran denies talks with the U.S. Yeah, it's Saudi Arabia they're talking to. They're not talking to Trump. As Trump halts strikes at the last minute, Iranian officials say there are only current talks with Oman over reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Well, that's not the U.S., that's Oman. And both have agreed to a toll. Iran denied any ongoing talks with the U.S. despite the claim from Donald Trump, who called off strikes against the country on Saturday. Trump announced that negotiations with Iran would begin on Monday after he decided to hold off new strikes against the Islamic Republic in order to pursue a deal. So he's going to pretend to have a fake deal that doesn't even happen, but that's to manipulate the markets, as you can see all that there. Iran says talks with Oman on the Strait of Hormuz is nearing completion, so they're almost done on what they're proposing. The issue of Iran and Oman holding talks to reach a mechanism for safeguards our interest is not new and has been under discussion for a long time. So like everything else, though, you know, agreeing about a toll, what that's going to be, and, you know, having an agreement with both governments on routes. As Gaza ceasefire's second phase gains momentum, Israeli state increases deadly strikes. So like everything else, though, this is what Trump was bragging about his Gaza peace plan, because I guess it's at phase 2, where Israeli state can continue to annihilate all Palestinians under the guise of, you know, oh, there's Hamas over there, right? Hamas' acceptance of mediators' proposal was expected to mark a turning point after months of stalled diplomacy. Yeah, just stalled on the Israelis because they won't stop their genocide. On Sunday, the Israeli terrorists carried out more than 10 airstrikes across the Gaza Strip, killing at least 18 Palestinians, including women and children, and wounding dozens more, according to Gaza's civil defense. So, you know, just continuing their genocide. Ansarullah chief warns KSA against escalation in Yemen. Your allies cannot save you. You know, this is warning Saudi Arabia, you know, to before they even think about launching an attack that, look, your allies ain't going to save you. Houthi speech came amid reports that Riyadh is planning a large-scale land and sea campaign against Yemen. The leader of the Ansarullah resistance movement warned Saudi Arabia on the 30th of July that it will face full escalation in the event that a broad war against Yemen is renewed. So, you know, you can see why Saudi Arabia wanted to de-escalate, because they're outnumbered on both sides. Iran and Houthis, which are two different things, but yet at the same time, very deadly to Saudi Arabia, you know, because their oil is everything that they have. They don't have any defense because the U.S. can't defend them. Which leads me here to the third woe that cometh quickly. Here in the AMP translation, you know, this is what's about to take place. As you know, this war is going to escalate to the point that the only thing that's left are the missiles, which is that array of missiles that the Most High Yahweh is going to use against, you know, better known as the Lord of Hosts, going to muster up against Babylon. Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 29, called together many archers against Babylon. All those who bend the bow encamp against her on every side. Let no one from there escape. Repay her according to her actions, just as she has done due to her. For she has been proudly defiant and presumptuous against the Most High, against the Holy One of Yasharallah, against Israel. You know, so you Edomites here in Babylon and Basra are about to be destroyed. Therefore her young men shall fall in her streets, And all their soldiers will be destroyed on that day, saith the Most High. Yeah, you're not going to be able to win this war. Behold, I am against you, O Babylon, you arrogant one. You are the pride and presumption personified, says the Lord of hosts. For your day has come, the time that I will punish you. The arrogant proud one will stumble and fall, with no one to raise him up, and I will set fire to his cities, and it will devour all who are around him. So that's why Iran's winning and destroying everything. Everything about the U.S. is blowing up. All their plans are being foiled. They're having to regather. Well, what can you do to hit them hard? And you just can't do it anymore. Because the Most High has gathered up an assembly of nations to come against Babylon. Mostly there in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. So Babylon's about to be cut off in that day. Which that day is slowly but surely approaching. Which is why they want to get this new world order into perspective. You know, they want everybody pretty much to have the microchip, you know, which is coming by way of that new world order. That's why they're trying to fast track this merger with the Israeli state, making it officially the United States of Israel, you know. And like everything else, though, they're going to be destroyed. Because the Most High has always had a plan to eliminate Amalek off the face of the earth. And he's going to do so, especially this Third World War. And then he'll serve slavery, and then they will be found no more. So hopefully this has all been edifying. For that I want to say, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadosh, Wa Abal Babal. Brakatum, Jehovah elect. Don't forget, in a couple more weeks, about 3 more weeks, the draft begins. And also, the stockpiles, the oil stockpiles will run out. You know, the reserve stockpiles are already run out, but you'll start to see it more so in the middle of this month. Shalom.